This week in green. Now you can cruise under the Golden Gate Bridge without overtaxing the planet. A vessel called Sea Change is the first ever public transit ferry to be propelled by 3 hydrogen fuel cells. The 70-foot ferry can carry 75 passengers and will service multiple stops along San Francisco's waterfront. Sponsored by the California Air Resources Board and developed by Switch Marine, the project is hoped to be the first in creating hydrogen vessels of all sizes for both the harbor and even the ocean. In recent years, a lot of the attention for clean energy is focused on cars, trucks, and trains, with less emphasis on passenger ferries, but with greenhouse gas emissions on the rise, maritime solutions are coming into focus. Hydrogen fuel cells provide electricity in a similar way to batteries, with the main difference being that you need a constant source of hydrogen and oxygen to continue producing power. The waste products of hydrogen are thought to be mostly water and heat. Sea Change can travel at a speed of 20 knots and should arrive in the Bay Area in late May in time to serve passengers for the summer season. This article reminds us that we should never confuse hydrogen sea ferries with hydrogen sea fairies, who contain mystical power using hydrogen to mate with living animals whose offspring include sea ferrets, sea carrots, sea parrots, and New Zealanders.
We cannot mistake them for the sea fairies.
So often people do.
It's just
you
a
hear
common...
sea fairy and you think they mean sea fairy.
You think that you go, I'm going to climb aboard this, and you forget that there is a whole species out there that you cannot ride around in the San Francisco Bay. And I'm glad you are the mouthpiece for that group of people, those sea creatures.
These are the jokes, people. This is the best I can do with sea fairies. I mostly wanted to have the rhyme: sea ferrets, sea carrots, sea parrots.
Oh, that's great.
And New Zealanders. I got to give my whack to the Kiwis every once in a while.
Of course.
Yeah.
Sea ferrets, sea carrots, sea parrots, and New Zealanders.
And New Zealanders.
New Zealanders.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's interesting. It actually brings up a whole interesting topic, right? Because hydrogen is like a lot of people are looking at hydrogen as the answer, as the future, as the way we're going to go forward and handle a lot of this, if my mouth would start working properly, with climate change and handling our carbon footprint. The great thing about hydrogen is it is the most abundant of.
There's plenty of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of hydrogen around.
Right.
The downside with hydrogen is currently the best way to produce it is through burning fossil fuels to get the energy. Now, it requires quite a bit of energy because you're separating oxygen from hydrogen and water.
Right.
Which is kind of an involved process. So they do have a way of making it they call green hydrogen.
Right.
And green hydrogen is generally where you'll take a renewable energy source like solar panels or windmills,
Sure.
and then you use basically a different process to use heat to separate it out, which works. It's also pretty energy intensive, but because you're using green energy, it's a way of storing it. It's almost like using hydrogen as a battery, because instead of having that energy be stored into a battery, you turn that energy into hydrogen, and then you make your green hydrogen, and then you can move it around. And that's kind of one of the big thoughts of how we can solve the problem, is to make more green hydrogen, and then less of the hydrogen that's made
from
through
fuels.
fuels.
Yeah.
So it's a good idea. It is energy intensive. It's not perfect yet. It needs a lot of development. But we talk a lot on the show about the fact that that's okay. If things need development, then we got to put the investment, put the time in, put the energy, and then get it right. And I think that's something that'll eventually get there. And I think that green hydrogen could be an option that way.
Yeah.
Another thing though, also, we kind of touched on a little bit as I was talking through the article, but they work actually like a hydrogen cell works. A fuel cell works kind of like a battery.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very very similar in how it works. But yeah, I mean the major difference I pointed out earlier is that instead of having basically everything stored in the metals of the battery itself, you're actually just introducing hydrogen, and then you get oxygen from the air, and that's how it happens. You can make it work. And as long as you have a continual supply, it'll work like a battery.
Yeah, I mean,
which is kind of neat. And then that makes it also better for the environment to some degree, because you're using less kind of potentially problematic stuff,
materials,
like you do in a battery.
Right.
So there is a ton of advantages to it. There really are. I think it could be really great. We shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that it's something that we've got the answer to right away. It needs more development. It needs more money put into it. But it's one of the many things that you look at to kind of together solve the problem.
Yeah, I feel like it's, you and I were just at an energy summit, and hydrogen is getting kicked around as kind of the latest buzzword. I feel like in the green community, these words kind of rise to the surface, and everybody's talking about it and saying, we need to do this, and no, this is the solution. We got to go hydrogen. And it is one of those things that when you hear it, you go, everybody can get really excited because it's a word that you can go, that sounds great. But there are problems with it, and I know that we have history with hydrogen too.
Yeah,
we have history,
we do.
and so that's where my brain always goes. The freaking Hindenburg was hydrogen
disaster. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the Empire State Building and so many of those tall buildings at the time have spires.
Yeah,
and the point of those was that a hydrogen balloon could moor there. It could
really.
dock there. Yeah.
I didn't know
that was the idea. So
wow.
So the idea at the time was we're going to put these on all the buildings, and then you can just float right up to wherever you want to go, and down you'll get, and it'll be really perfect.
Wow.
Unfortunately,
that didn't happen.
One of them blew up. It was pretty spectacular. It was a disaster. And so then everyone's like, no.
We're not floating in hydrogen.
A lot of times you don't know what the problems are until you try it, which is terrible to say, but that's kind of how it works. And I think that it'll be sort of like that with this. But I do want to be careful about how much we kick it. Because a lot of people kick nuclear power because of the disasters involved with nuclear.
And you go, you're not giving it a fair shake. There's a lot of tech around protecting that from happening.
Right. Nuclear isn't the same as it was, and it's not as dangerous as people say it. I mean, look, if you are on the plane that crashes, then flying in an airplane is incredibly dangerous.
Yeah. It's true.
But most of them don't.
Yeah.
Like, they don't really.
And that's
crash,
important to remember, right?
Yeah. So we go on them because it's just incredibly rare. I think that they do have, it's expensive tech right now even to make a fuel cell.
Yeah.
And so there's just a lot of problems expense-wise behind it. But, but if you're starting to do it and you're starting to get into it, then you can discover a little better what the problems are. And they do a better job with safety in general with kind of everything than they used to. So I expect it wouldn't be too terrible of a problem if you had things working with green hydrogen, but again, it's pretty unstable. It'll light, man.
Yeah,
it'll go up. It'll go up if it's not properly handled.
So we can use it as long as we protect the sea ferries, hydrogen ferries.
Yes, sea ferries.
And sea parrots.
Not sea fairies.
And carrots.
Sea fairies. Yeah. No, to me, before we wrap it up, the thing that people are missing is that if we try to make it, it will cause probably worse damage to the environment currently than not. Because even though the hydrogen itself, the fuel cell itself, it all produces water. Water and maybe some other things that they will discover in 30 years that are killing us. But as far as we know, it's pretty much eating water.
Okay.
But you can't get the hydrogen. We don't have enough green hydrogen.
Okay.
We just don't. They make the hydrogen by burning fuel.
Okay.
So it's kind of backwards.
And
but I think we develop the technology to get there.
Yeah. Keep working on it, guys. Keep trying new things and developing it, and hopefully we'll find our way through.
Absolutely. We'll have more for you soon.